All right, welcome everyone to day 2 of the BSAM virtual conference. For our next session, we have up Reverend Andrew Rollins coming from Ward AME Church in Kansas. And Reverend Rollins is going to be talking about the theology of holy Black rage, Afrofuturism, Black biblical hermeneutics, and the revolutionary philosophy of Frantz Fanon. So I'm going to go ahead and give you the floor.
Good morning to all assembled in Dakar, Senegal, and those who are connecting through cyberspace. Indeed, it is an honor to be a presenter at this conference, Future Waves, Afrofuturism 2.0 and the World, Futurizing Fanon. Before I get started on my presentation, I would like to give you a little background on me. I am an ordained elder in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. I have been a pastor for 40 years. My ministry is one that is pastoral, evangelical, and social gospel oriented. In my youth, in the late 1960s and early 1970s, I was involved in the Black student movement and the Black Revolution. In the Black student movement, I was an advocate for Black studies, more Black faculty at the universities, and spaces at the university that recognized and honored Black history and culture. In the Black Revolution, I was a member of the Black Panther Party. The Black Panther Party was a revolutionary organization that advocated a transformation of the United States government and society. I have been involved in the Afrofuturist movement since 2011 and have worked closely with Dr. Ronaldo Anderson, who is the co-founder of the Black Speculative Arts Movement. I look upon my involvement with Afrofuturism as a continuation of my dedication to Black liberation that I committed to many years ago. My presentation this morning will be on the subject of the theology of holy Black rage, Afrofuturism, Black biblical hermeneutics, and the revolutionary philosophy of Frantz Fanon. My goal is to show how the ideas of Frantz Fanon and Black liberation theology interconnect in the context of Afrofuturism and Astro-Blackness. There is a straight path connecting Fanon's theory on Black anger and the theory and the theology of holy Black rage. In fact, Fanon's theory on Black anger and holy Black rage represent different sides of the same coin. One side is philosophical, and the other is theological. Fanon's philosophical side represents a secular theory of Black anger, while the other side represents a sacred theory of Black anger. To fully understand these concepts, they must be looked at through the lens of Afrofuturism by applying the concept of Astro-Blackness. In fact, Fanonian's Black anger and holy Black rage are manifestations of Astro-Blackness. Let me begin by giving you my definition of both Afrofuturism and Astro-Blackness. Afrofuturism is an anthropological system of metaphysics, aesthetics, and social thought that is used to analyze and interpret art, literature, music, science, technology, religion, and society from an Afrocentric futuristic worldview. Astro-Blackness is an Afrofuturist concept in which a person's Black state of consciousness, released from the confining and crippling slave or colonial mentality, becomes aware of the multitude and varied possibilities and probabilities within the universe. When a Black person is released from the slave or colonial mentality, they will naturally be angry about what has happened to them in the past and about the continued state of oppression. I would say. The Astro-Black state of consciousness will free them from turning their anger on themselves or other oppressed people, and it will guide them to channel their anger against the evil, oppressive forces that are harming them. The primary mission of Astro-Blackness is Black survival. Because if we don't survive as a people, we will not have a future. It is obvious that there are white supremacist forces that are working diligently for our subjugation or elimination. The thought of that should make us go on guard and should make us angry. There are members of the white elite in the United States who are afraid that they will be overtaken by the increasing numbers of non-white people. The white population in the world is only 15% of the world's population. This makes the white population in the world a minority whose relative proportion is steadily decreasing. Also, the whites in the United States are heading toward being a minority in America. Currently, whites are 61% of the American population. However, it is projected that people of color will be the majority in the United States somewhere between 2041 and 2046. White fear of being overtaken by the growing population of people of color is not new. It is a psychohistorical phenomenon that was being vigorously discussed as far back as the early part of the 20th century. Lothrop Stoddard was a historian, anthropologist, and political theorist who delved deep into this subject at the turn of the last century. He was a white racist and eugenicist whose writings espouse his racial biases and theories on white supremacy. His most famous book, The Rising Tide of Color Against White World Supremacy, was published in 1920. In this book, Stoddard foretells of the downfall of the white world empire and colonialism. He explained the effect of World War I, which he called a European Civil War, on weakening the white nations. Stoddard said that white nations cannot continue to engage in these internecine conflicts and maintain global primacy. He warned the white world of a dark world with a huge population resentful of being dominated by whites. He believed that the dark world would take advantage of the white world's weakened state resulting from wars with each other. Stoddard was not only worried about colored armies conquering the white world, but was also worried about a more gradual, non-combative way he thought the white world would be overtaken. He was fearful of what he considered to be the harmful effect of immigration, which he said could turn whole countries, which were then white, into lands populated by people of color. We Black people have an organized white supremacist network that is intent on keeping us in a subjugated position. This network is evil and diabolical, and its intent demands that we resist against that system for our own survival and prosperity. Frantz Fanon believed that we should be angry about what is happening to us and that we should resist what is happening to us. Fanon speaks ostensibly and profoundly about the concept of anger, particularly in his most influential book, The Wretched of the Earth. He analyzes anger not just as a personal emotion, but as a political and psychological force created by the brutal realities of colonialism and racism. Fanon famously argued that for the colonized, anger and revolutionary violence could be a cleansing force. He did not romanticize violence, but rather saw it as a necessary and often inevitable response to the systemic violence of colonialism. For Fanon, the act of a colonized person fighting back against their oppressor was deeply therapeutic and humanizing. Fanon saw anger as a natural and moral response to oppression. Now, let's shift gears. Have a message here now from the Black sacred cosmos. Throughout history, God has sent angels from heaven as servants, protectors, and messengers. I believe that God dispatched the black angel of history from a distant celestial realm with a message of salvation, deliverance, and liberation to the Reverend Dr. Melinda Contreras-Byrd. That message was the theology of holy Black rage. Reverend Contreras-Byrd is an elder in the African Methodist Episcopal Church and a licensed psychologist. She is married to Bishop Vernon R. Byrd Jr., presiding prelate of the 17th Episcopal District of the AME Church. The 17th District includes the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the Republic of the Congo, Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, and Kenya. Dr. Contreras-Byrd is the Episcopal supervisor of the 17th District, which gives her oversight of the work of the Mission Society in that district. She is also the editor of a book titled Toward a Theology of Holy Black Rage. In this book, she introduces the sacred dimension of Black anger, whereas Fanon deals with Black anger through psychopolitical and materialist lens. Dr. Contreras Bird looks at Black anger from a spiritual and theological lens. She likens Black anger against oppression as righteous indignation against evil. Dr. Contreras Bird states that the title of her book suggests not only the idea that Black people are angry, but that we are enraged, and that furthermore, this rage is not only acceptable, but holy. She defines holy as sacred, consecrated, derived from God, and set apart for the purposes of God. Black people have a right to be angry. When we think about how Africa has been plundered and pillaged by the Western powers, including Europe and North America, and we think about how Africa has been robbed of its natural resources, and how millions of Africans were stolen from their homeland and sent into slavery in the Western Hemisphere to make Western nations rich and powerful, you cannot help but be angry. And what makes it even more terrible, this state of brutalization, exploitation, and oppression by an international white supremacist political and economic system continues to this day. When I think about it, what happened to us and what is happening to us, it makes my blood boil. Dr. Contreras Bird addresses this feeling in a book. She states, "What I want to stress is that we Black people have the sanctified right to not only be angry, but to be enraged. To be enraged is part of our holy calling to issue rightful expressions of works of justice for the kingdom of God." She goes on to say that a theology that teaches us to repress our justifiable rage is not a theology that embraces the truth and ramifications of our humanness. It is not a life-affirming or justice-building theology. Furthermore, she addresses the state of our psychological health. She says that the lack of a theology of holy Black rage has also aided in the development of unhealthy personality traits among Black people, especially in the U.S. At this time, I would like to lift up the life and ministry of Denmark Vesey as a historical expression and manifestation of holy Black rage. Denmark Vesey was a preacher in Charleston, South Carolina, who planned, organized, and led a slave revolt in 1822. Unfortunately, before the revolt was launched, a slave that had more loyalty to his master than his own people betrayed the insurrection. Nonetheless, the theology of Denmark Vesey is worthy of study. The religious and theological convictions of Denmark Vesey were a blend of biblical scriptures and African spiritual practices. Vesey developed a powerful liberation theology and framed a Christian narrative that justified armed rebellion against enslavers. This message resonated with thousands of Black Charlestonians. Vesey's religious appeal also drew from West African traditions. His chief lieutenant was a man called Gullah Jack. Gullah Jack was an Angolan priest who incorporated African-based rituals and spiritual practices into the rebellion. This fusion of Christian and African beliefs gave the movement a potent Pan-African character. De Mark Vesey believed slavery was one of the foulest of sins, and because slavery was against the will of God, slave masters should be punished. He thought those who practiced slavery should be sentenced to death. This belief was based on Exodus 21:16, which reads, "He who kidnaps a man and sells him, if he is found in his hand, shall surely be put to death." Vesey did not think it was a sin for slaves to kill their slave owners. In fact, he taught his followers that they had the right to violently revolt against those who enslaved them. In the 21st century, Black people will have to fight. The war is not over. The liberation struggle continues. We will have to fight on all fronts, that is, politically, economically, militarily, and spiritually. Our anger, our holy Black rage, our righteous indignation is the fuel that propels us forward on to victory. My goal has been to futurize the powerful ideas of Frantz Fanon, to make his philosophy more applicable to the 21st century. In Fanon's time, he was primarily addressing predatory capitalism and colonialism. Fanon lived and wrote during the 20th century, and therefore he never had to deal with many of the issues that we are wrestling with today. Blending Astro-Blackness with Fanon's precise and critical system of analysis gives us the tools to address the pressing issues of our time, such as climate change, transhumanism, artificial intelligence, accelerationism, and techno-autocratic capitalism. Finally, linking Frantz Fanon's theory of Black anger to holy Black rage introduces a powerful interpretation of Black resistance. Fanon saw anger and violence as a psychological and revolutionary necessity for decolonization. Holy Black rage as a spiritual, righteous dimension to that anger, and recognizes and appreciates that anger as a tool of divine and moral justice against systemic evil. Also, holy Black rage connects us to the insights and wisdom of ancestral intelligence, and it empowers us with the Spirit of God. so that we see that while Afrofuturism and Astro-Blackness both embrace and appreciate the benefits of science and technology in the meta-modern era, they do so while still appreciating the spirituality of our ancestors.
Thank you. Was that the conclusion?
Yes, yes.
Perfect. All right. So I did want to, I do have a few questions, and I did want to let folks know who came in later that we are recording the presentation. So if you do turn your camera on, it is currently recording. So just please be mindful of that. You do not have to turn your camera on if you have a question. If you do have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask it, or you can put it into the chat. I did have questions considering my familiarity with Fanon, but also thinking about, I'm really intrigued by this concept of holy Black rage, because I think that people would suggest that rage is not holy and or cannot be holy. So what is your response to that, given the work you do and the presentation you just provided us? What is your response to people who would suggest that rage cannot be holy?
Well, my response to that is that all our emotions are gifts from God, okay? And that rage or anger is an emotion. Now, it's how you channel it, how you use it, determines whether or not it is holy or not. But the Bible clearly states that as a person of God and as a Christian, you have the right and the responsibility to have righteous indignation against evil. And what has happened to Black people over the last several centuries has been evil, it's been diabolical. And if we look at Jesus, Jesus also practiced holy Black rage, because we'll see him going into the temple one day and getting upset with the money changers, and even taking a whip and kicking over the table and driving them out because of their unholiness and their perversion of religion. So we have the right to resist it, because we're not supposed to just be docile and submit to abuse. God does not want us to do that.
Thank you for your response. I'm going to just continue to push us further even more and
Okay?
say, what if people suggest that they don't feel like they can be righteous given all of the historical violence that Black people experience? How can we respond to that in this concept of holy Black rage?
Okay, so say that again so I really understand what you mean.
Yeah, of course, I can definitely repeat it. What if people, you said that holy Black rage operates on this notion of righteous indignation, right?
Right.
What if people do not feel like they can be righteous given all of the historical violence that Black people have experienced?
Oh, I think they need, that's where counseling is important, because a lot of folk been brainwashed, see, and they're confused. They don't know who they are. They the most unrighteous thing you can do is submit to oppression and to think that you're supposed to be a mat to be walked upon. That is not your natural position. Being a subject to oppression and exploitation, your natural position is to be someone who lives a full life and realizes their full potential, which most Black people on both sides of the Atlantic because of the oppressive system that we under are not allowed to do.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your responses to my question and for your presentation. We are going to move forward with our next person on the program, technically, since we are out of time for this presentation. So before we start with your presentation, Dr. Guthrie, I just wanted to let you know that we are recording all of this, so you will be put on camera. So just wanted to give you a notice. And also, yes, wanted to go ahead and move forward and give you the floor to talk about your presentation.
All right. Well, thank you and good morning. I'm going to share my screen just to put as a backdrop, and I won't be talking very long, but I just want to make sure. Oops, here we go. That I got some background here, so you can see. Oh my goodness, let me try another one here. Hold on one sec. All right, that's better. Let me go back to share screen. I will stop sharing, and then what's the other one? Let's see. Sorry about this. Let me go back to this. And there. Do you see the title Alien Romulus and Future of Sentient Blackness?
Yes, I do see it.
All right. So good morning. Let me start by saying it's an honor to be with you today. I'm Ricardo Guthrie. I teach at Fisk University online to a graduate program in social justice. And today I'm out on the West Coast at Pacific time. So I just wanted to run really quickly through my idea that most of the pop culture that we have around us, even if it gets focused on technology and progress and the future, still reinforces the embodiment of Blackness as a site of violence, disruption, death, all the negative viewpoints of what it means to be human are focused through the Black body, even when it becomes a machine, a robot, a slave. And to say the future of AI is just as threatening as Black people were in the past, precisely because we were created as a being for service to a quite oppressive modernity regime. And we see this replicated again and again and again. AI is going to take over. It's going to become violent. It's going to control our futures in ways that we can't deprogram. That sounds like Black bodies to me. And in some of the movies that we've seen, Get Out, Zola, Alien Romulus is the latest one, where you have this allyship between Black men and white women as the future of society. However, something goes wrong, either sexual violence or a type of violent violence that destroys that relationship. And that relationship is not just between bodies, between white bodies and Black bodies, but between our very understanding of what it means to be a human being in a future modernistic society. So in Alien Romulus, again, what happens is there's an oppressive regime that's colonizing the universe, and two beings come to try to save society. Rain and her robot slave, Andy. Now they're considered brothers and sisters, that he has always grown up with her. And so she is his protector because he's an obsolete robot. So throughout the movie, he displays the type of imperfections, gentle, disarming, by using bad jokes or dad jokes. And ultimately, he's pushed to the side until he gets a computer upgrade. Then he becomes a very smart and capable being who threatens everybody, including Rain, his former sister and or master. He gets to be deprogrammed, right, and taken offline after he saves everybody in the future. And she says, I can fix you. It'll be okay. Go to sleep. And then when we wake up in a couple of years in the new universe, we'll reprogram you. And so Andy, short for Android, succumbs to this dominant relationship. This again reminds me of some of the tropes that we have seen again and again. Back in the 1800s, one of the central themes of the anti-slavery movement and abolition in England was this engraving, am I not a man and a brother? It's a very serious question because Blacks were never considered human beings, men, sisters, mothers, or brothers. But this was the appeal to white consciousness for empathy, sympathy, and compassion. Am I not a man and a brother? There's a human paradigm that we are striving for, that we did strive for, that had a tactical or strategic relationship to countering slavery, or did it? So in this movie, Andy on the right here is backed up by Rain to try to fight the xenomorph, the monster, right? The monster that always comes to take over modernity and destroy white civilization. Until Andy gets reprogrammed with a chip. He gets a new computer configuration that says, well, wait a minute, maybe the xenomorph is the success of the future. Maybe it is the prime being that should take over human beings because you all have messed up. Again, this is the fear of AI, having an independent analysis and an action orientation that may destroy civilization, i.e. white civilization. So Andy goes from being an imperfect being who's scared and afraid to being a self-possessed Black man. Even though he's a robot, he's a machine, he has no gender, he has no race, but you can look at him and say, that's a Black man. That's a Black man who's in control of his life. Why does he become legible? He becomes legible because of white benevolence that gives him the power to attack another monster. But in so doing, this white benevolence unleashes a type of violent independence of the Black man or the Black being. And this analytical framework, again, is not so unusual. We're looking at the double consciousness of Du Bois. We're still being seen through the eyes of another. And this fits in very nicely with Fanon's prediction that only through violence can the new Black emerge. Now, that's pretty pessimistic. You're saying that we can only be violent, and that's the only way that we can have our humanity? Well, no, I don't think Fanon said that. He simply said, in the human paradigm, humans only respect those others who threaten that paradigm. That's an Afro-pessimistic view that Wilderson and Hartman and others also agree with, that there's a continuing natal alienation and a social death through the enslavement of modernity. It's the paradigm of being a human in the modern world that never goes away, even if we're replaced by machines as slaves. So perhaps we should revisit this idea of what it means to be human. And I'm echoing what Butler spoke about, I believe, yesterday. Humans do not exist. Humans do not exist. What exists are the processes and the systems that provide us opportunities to be legible. But we can't be legible because we're not entities, but a construct. We need the other, someone below us, to become more legible. But who's lower than a slave? Black, white, male, women, gay, straight. Who's lower than a slave? I don't think anybody is. But if you look at the Blackness that we carry around, that automatically signals slave, even, again, if it's a robot. So we're entrapped by the white habitus, using Bourdieu, the embodied history of whiteness that has been internalized and so therefore forgotten as history. This is a means by which whiteness colonizes and mediates Blackness in the public sphere. What's our hope? Our hope is that our sentient blackness, Black consciousness, will continue into the future and become embodied in the things that we create. Yes, AI, robots, successful programming. We have this hope that we can program ourselves into the future in ways that don't always echo, there's a Black slave, there's a lower being. And we're like, no, we're humans just like you. Am I not a man and a brother? Well, actually, you're not. In Fanon's perspective, historical legacies of enslavement and white domination continue. Colonizing, commodifying, profitizing Black bodies as fungible commodities, labor, and flesh, even if that labor is done by an AI robot, and if the flesh is really a mechanism. This commodification of racial desire is projected onto the robot, onto the AI, onto the future technology. Now, in this movie, again, it's not the best franchise movie of the Aliens movie series, but it's pretty good. Does gender disrupt this legacy or prove its salience? Do allyship with white women or the other gender provide an opportunity in which we also can unite with someone or a thing that has been put down by society? Perhaps that's the hope. But at the end of the movie, again, she's in control. He's been deprogrammed. He's been put to sleep, and she will fix it. That's the scary part of this modernity. We're still scared about letting women have a role or control. And I'm not saying, again, it's a perfect movie that explains all this in great detail. They hit on something but didn't know what to do with it. You have a Black robot who has a British accent, who is, again, echoing Black male disruption. And he unites with a female interrupter and disruptor of society. Currently, racial regimes that are mediated through film, TV, literature, etc., continue to use this interrupter, disruptor franchise to great effect. But it has, again, a violent, negative, death-oriented outcome. So our future hope lies in AI, perhaps. I say nope. AI platforms reinforce this trap of racial embodiment. So why use the AI or robot as a stand-in for Black male slave servant? Because it's more palatable. You can say more things trying to let a machine do this for us. There's also a level of deflection and dual consciousness between benevolence and violence. Should he be violent? Should he join the other side? That's not the question. The question is, what happens when a Black person, male, female, other, decides to choose for themselves to destroy the society that creates oppression? What happens then? Again, you deem them as violent, uncontrollable, the other that has to be destroyed, the monsters within. This is the return of repression, the desire to love and hold Blackness as our own and yet push it away. That becomes the central thesis of this film between Andy, the robot, and Rain, his sister, who really is his master. In the future, I want to say that sentient Blackness, our consciousness, can stand up to modernity, profitization, commodification, domination, colonization, all the other Asians. It can. And we don't have to reproduce modernity and the human. We don't in order to survive. There's always a xenomorph, the alien monster who's really us. Black men, women, femmes, AI robots, they also have to stand against corporate greed. What's wrong with having allies? No problem. But you have to understand, the violent threat is only the thing that makes us legible. Future phenonism versus a hopeful or even a hateful sequel to this plot that never ends between Black men, white women, between Black beings, white beings, as co-equal destructors of social death and natal alienation. I'll put my money on that. But this xenomorphic monster continues to exist. It's the immigrant. It's the other. It's the LGBTQ. It's that person that's around us that really is us. It's an existential threat that continues to disrupt modernity. And it always has an embodiment, a physical attribute that overrides the type of programming that white modernity asks of us. In this bleak world, there's no spiritual redemption except through a gendered white female who comes to the rescue. As Andy or AI is rendered obsolete, dysfunctional, dependent, and therefore non-threatening, AI provides a synthetic, human, and technological wonder of how we can save ourselves from ourselves. Again, Andy on the left as a self-possessed Black man versus Andy as the non-threatening, dependent being. You can decide. Am I not a man and a brother? I don't think that's the question. Should we accept being predators or saviors? Again, I don't think that's the answer. But future sentient Blackness can provide us a way to actually disrupt. We're good disruptors and interrupters. I think we should embrace that. It doesn't mean that we'll be violent creatures. It doesn't mean that we will threaten society, except the paradigm that you have to be human to be seen, and that once you're seen, you'll be accepted. I don't think that's actually where we're going in the future. And if we are a critical phenomenism, we have to accept the fact that we may always be seen as violent disruptors to a society that doesn't want us. That's my 15-minute or 10-minute walk through a movie that's probably a B movie on your list, but I ask you to see it and see if I'm on mark. So thank you very much, and I'll stop there. Should I stop sharing at this point?
You can, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Thank
you, Courtney.
Of course, thank you. We're going to open it up for questions, of course, if anyone has any. I know I have some myself, but I want to open the floor first to folks if they have questions about the presentation. So just to clarify, you're suggesting that sentient Blackness will be the, I guess, quote unquote, response to the antithesis of humanity, of this notion of humanness, right?
Right, exactly. Sentient Blackness. Yeah. And the idea is that, well, what's wrong with being human? The problem is that we can never be recognized if we see ourselves as human. And as Butler theorizes, to be a human is to accept domination, control. You either be, what is it? A control or a controller, right? A killer or the killed. And that's a horrible binary, but I think Fanon was onto something. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. And I just want to bring another sort of scholar's work into the space to see how it folds into conversation with what you're doing. Because Asante recently, in I believe it was 2021, published this book called Being Human Being. I am from Temple, so I'm bringing that to the table right now. So I'm really curious as to how do you think this notion of sentient Blackness is in conversation with being human being? And I can sort of, in summary, recount conceptually what Asante is talking about. So he's saying that in response to this notion of white supremacy and the racial hierarchy that it produces, being human beingness is a way for African people across the diaspora to not have to produce in this capitalistic way, but rather to sit in their beingness and in their humanity. And he relies on moneticity, the ancient Kemetic principle, to understand being human beingness. So I'm really curious as to how you believe Black sentient, Black sentience is in conversation with being human being.
Oh, that's perfect, Courtney. I love your summary, and I do have that book. And I said, I like that. I like that more than the Black post-humanism of Butler. I really do. And I agree with Asante, Dr. Asante, that Ma'at and the other examples we have from history show us we don't have to choose this modern conception of human. We can choose the historical legacies of what it means to be a being, a cosmic being. And I love that part. But again, it's in our popular culture and in our daily lives, people haven't gotten to the level where they even understand Ma'at or even the African civilizationist approach to beingness. I accept beingness. And then other people are saying, and again, Dr. Rinaldo said the same thing. I have some problems with the post-human idea, but I'm coming around. And the reason is because again, what's wrong with redefining what it means to be human?
Yeah.
Nothing's wrong with that, because we have other examples where human is not the greatest stage of being. That's
Mhm.
what Ma'at and that's what Dr. Asante are really getting to. There are other ways to envision the beingness. But of course, since we're corporeal beings, we want to say, I want to be like them. I'm human too. Why can't I? Because as soon as you use those words, you get stuck, you get trapped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
the rub. Yeah.
I think that's really fascinating because I'm also thinking about how humanity, at least within the Western context, particularly within the United States, has been defined by documents such as the Declaration of Independence and things like that, that saw African people as three-fifths of a human. So
Yeah.
how can we define our notion of humanity based off of this
Yeah.
fractional response, so to speak? So
Yeah.
it really is in tune for sure. And
Uh-huh.
I'm thinking about, I'm not sure if you saw Ironheart, the new Marvel series.
I want to see it. What do you tell me?
Um,
Tell me what I need.
okay, because I think it really falls into conversation with this
Yeah.
alien Romulus conversation that you're building here.
Yeah.
I'm also sort of a nerd about thinking about generative AI and Afrofuturism. I'm presenting on it tomorrow, but
All right.
I am really fascinated by this notion of generative AI and particularly thinking about how it manifests in this Disney Plus show has been like,
Yeah.
mind warping for me.
Yeah.
And I think that this presentation you're talking about, it folds into conversation with it because in Ironheart,
Yeah.
uh, something happens, like essentially a glitch happens where,
Yes.
of course, Ironheart goes to Wakanda. Like everyone saw Wakanda Forever for the most part.
Yeah.
And so Ironheart is in Wakanda. And when she's in Wakanda and in her suit,
Yeah.
she can she can use the Wakandan like generative AI to power her suit. So
Yeah.
that when she comes back to Chicago after everything that happens in Wakanda during
Uh-huh.
this, she's attempting to replicate the same AI that powered her suit in Wakanda.
All right.
And when she is powering this new replica, she falls asleep, and her friend who passed away from gun violence becomes the auto generative
Wow.
AI being, so to
Uh,
speak.
yeah.
Of course, which I find mind warping to consider in like the Afrofuturist concept.
Yeah.
But I've really just been thinking about it when you mentioned this sort of black man who becomes this sidekick, who then becomes this quote unquote black sentient to an extent.
Yeah.
I'm really thinking about that in the context of the friend because I won't spoil what happens in the end, but
Please. Yeah.
she is essentially becoming this like AI force, and then
Yeah.
there's portions of the series where she begins to like tap into Ironheart's memories to
Uh-huh.
look at how the actual human friend behaved so
Uh-huh.
that she could sort of get a emotional response out of Ironheart
Yeah.
via the replication of her friend's mannerisms and things like that.
Yes.
And so I was really thinking about,
Yeah.
I'm curious as to just
Okay.
your thoughts on that, or just like how
Yeah.
you're conceptualizing this notion of black sentient.
No, very good. I'm looking forward to Ironheart. It's on my list. And for me, the idea of empathy, sympathy, and compassion are hardwired into the human physiognomy. And so that idea that a machine could replicate that,
Yeah.
in some ways that's scary, but in other ways it's like, don't we do that with animals, with our favorite toy when we're growing up, with our computers, with our cell phones? Yes, these become the creatures of desire. And so if a machine can replicate our friends or our lost loved ones or our ancestors,
Mm-hmm.
that's a pretty powerful idea, because I think beyond the idea of having a philosophical connection to sentient blackness, you know, we want the 3D connection. We want
Right.
the real thing that you can wrap ourselves around. And but not to the extent that we fetishize it. And that again is part of the why we commodify all these things that we can't seem to do without. These are fetishes now, and they really shouldn't be. But can you put that down? That's the question. If that being takes over her friend's entity and becomes that consciousness, that's a good thing. But on the other hand, then why are you fetishizing a being that has ceased to exist either through gun violence or just death? Why are we doing that? Am I resurrecting my mom, my grandma, my great uncle so I can have a conversation? How selfish is that? That again, I think plays on our own narcissistic view that I've got to have it here with me, as opposed to your time is done. Let it go and look for the new friend. That's a hard one, Courtney.
Well, it was complicated because she didn't desire for the friend to come into the AI. It
Right.
happened accidentally when she fell asleep. And then when she woke up, the friend was this AI force.
Wow.
So it was really complicated. And then I sort of have to spoil it because of what's being implicated in the conversation. But in the end, her friend comes back, and we can infer from what happens towards the end where they introduce Mephisto, which is essentially what we learned, the Marvel equivalent of like the devil.
Yes,
so she needs to deal with the devil essentially to resurrect her friend. So it just gets super complicated. It's such a sort of fantastical way that Ron Coogler constructs it.
Okay. I'll look for it. One of my other our colleagues at NCBS talked about, well, let's watch out for Mr. Coogler and see where he goes, because he always seems to kill Black mothers. What is that? He killed Angela Bassett, and then in the last movie, he killed Annie, who was the savior of all those people. Why did he do that?
I'll give him credit and say the Black mothers in this series.
Okay. All right.
And they were integral parts of the storyline as well. So
the
father actually was the one who was also killed by gun violence as well.
Okay. All right.
He's evenly killed, I guess, in that.
All right. I'll look for that.
I was also going to mention, thinking about this concept of a quote unquote sister, a white sister, to be exact.
Right. Okay.
And how these relationships get skewed when they're actually rooted in a commodification of labor. Because as you said, the quote unquote brother was actually enslaved to the other person. So how do you feel like these tropes of like familial relationships are being cloaked for really what's a commodification of labor?
Wow, that's really hard, Courtney, because another take on this is from Cedric Robinson. He said the racial regime is so powerful that we don't really like the story in which there's a co-equal pairing between whiteness and blackness. We don't like that. We want to see the tension. He says, because the racial regime tells us, well, that makes sense. The other is the threatening one. Blacks are afraid of whites. Whites are afraid of blacks. Men are afraid of women. Women are definitely afraid of men because we've seen the power of men to destroy and warp and commodify and turn relationships into a labor relationship. As a dramatist, as a poet, as an artist, I don't oppose the tension and the dynamic piece that exists in that plot, but it's taking a toll on the relationships that we could have that are more productive and more collegial, if you will. Does power consume all the time? No, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. But there's a way in which we can share power if we are strong enough, let's say, between white women and black men, or between all whites and all blacks. There's a way in which people respect power. And again, that to me goes back to Fanon saying, oh yeah, what kind of power are they going to respect? You as a co-equal or you as a threat? He says it's going to be a threat. And so that's a problematic piece. Do women warriors have to be women warriors all the time in order to get respect from men? It's an open question. But when women are powerful, I'm going to refer to the TV series that was ended after one season on Netflix, Lovecraft. Okay, so in Lovecraft, they created this new sequel, a segment number 7, in which in which the mother goes to another universe and lives out these different lives that she could never use on Earth. And then she agrees to go back to Earth, and her husband says, "Oh, you came back because you love me." And she's like, "Man, I thought I thought you understood this. I came back because I have a daughter who needs me."
Mm,
Not saying I don't love you. I'm just saying I had to make myself so small in order to exist in your world.
mm,
That was powerful. And for me, that's the whole thing is unless that woman is a threat, we force y'all to be smaller than you really are. Um, and that's again a male dominant, heteropatriarchal, capitalist oriented, racially commodified society that forces women and other beings to be less than who they really are. And that means a woman stands up with a stick, right? Or a gun or whatever in order to be heard and seen. And that's a pretty, again, damaging and destructive idea. But again, what does power concede? Nothing without a demand, without that threat. So I'd like to see more artwork like Lovecraft, Chapter 7, in
mhm,
which the woman becomes I am Hippolyta, and I can be whoever I want to be. But in this world, when I'm forced to be a mother and a slave to others, I don't accept that anymore. And so um, like I say, it's on us as artists to be able to write that script a little bit better so that Annie survives in Sinners. I'm sorry, you cannot kill the mother who tells you these are vampires, damn it, and this is how you kill vampires. But when it comes my turn, stake me. That's not a good plot line. That's more like when it becomes my time, we all die. How about that? As opposed to you live and you save your brother who you should have staked, right? Instead, you wimp out when it becomes time to kill your brother, but you killed me. Oh, come on. There's something wrong with that.
mhm.
So, anyway, we could talk more. I do love films, but I think there are other film products that we don't get to see in the independent film variety that never make it to the big screen. And those have more equitable, co-equal authorships between men and women. But right now, as Cedric Robbins said, the racial regime is so powerful, we're in love with it. And that includes the gender dynamic as well. We love seeing women put in their place and that it's okay for you to save our behinds, but then when it comes down to it, you get back. Annie, you have to die. I'm like, no. Somebody needed to grab that script and say, well, wait a minute, let's do something with this. Anyway, my daughter, who's 24, she says, no, there's other things in that movie, and it shows a character development that was incomplete for the twin. I said, okay, I'll accept that, Maya. But I'm really concerned how the women are treated in a wonderful franchise like Sinners, which had a great arc, and then it sort of falls off the edge. Other
Yeah,
questions or ideas or thoughts? That's a great one for starting conversation for sure.
yeah, I think Sinners is complicated. I'll leave it there because I could go on and on about it. Any other questions from the audience?
Yeah. Anybody else?
I would like to, Professor Guntry, I
Yes.
would like to know how do you see sinners having a great arch, but then falling off the edge in the end?
Okay. I I think that our friend Ryan Coogler, to his credit, had so many historical legacies that he wanted to put in the movie. He
Hmm.
couldn't decide which ones to leave out. And being a successful artist sometimes is the great undoing of your artwork. When he
Hmm.
was a poor, struggling man, and he knew he had a limited budget, his plots had to be tight.
Hmm.
And in this one, it's just overflowing. And so a good editor would have said, no, let's leave this alone, leave that alone, and stay on the stories that make sense. So I love the idea that he's using historical figures and ideas from
Hmm.
Mississippi to tell this story, and music itself as a way of pulling energy together, good and bad, etc. I would have liked him to say more about that because others have done that in ways that talk about arrested development and the blues idiom as a way of describing Black life in successful ways. That, for me, was the key part of the movie. This vampire stuff is, just a connection to American culture that we want to see vampires. And hey, let's put vampires in a juke joint down in Mississippi. Let's see what happens then. I'm like, I don't know if
Do
we
you think,
needed to do that.
do you think he could have left the vampires out?
Yeah, I think that he should have played up more where the Indians come to rescue his behind. They tried
Yeah.
to tell you that these were vampires, and then they walked out, and we don't see them again for the rest of the movie. No,
Mhm.
I think if I'm an Indian brother, I'm coming back to save these Negroes because they obviously don't understand. So my feeling is stay with the juke joint, stay with the blues epistemology, and you don't really need to show evils as vampires. You could show plenty of evil in Mississippi without turning them into vampires. But that's again a nod to American culture. We want to see vampires and that type of violence.
And
So
I know that in the Black church, we've had real serious debates about the movie Sinners.
yes,
I went to see Sinners a couple of times,
okay,
but then I had some people tell me that
yeah,
that was demonic. I shouldn't even go see it. Uh,
yeah,
I told one friend of mine, I said, go see Vampires, maybe take your daughter. It deals with the history. Of a father was from Mississippi. It deals
yeah,
with the history of Mississippi and the culture. I
yeah.
don't know about that. That movie is demonic. I don't even want to get that spirit on me.
Yeah. My wife is the same. She says, I can't see it. It's too violent. And so we'll look at the scene where they're in the juke joint and all the different ancestors are playing drums and rapping and music. I said that's a saving part that you really need to look because he was on to something when he did that. But you're right, Dr. Rollins. People will say there's too much demonism and extra worldism in it for me, and I can't see that because it's sinners. It's telling you it's going to be about sinners,
Right.
and so that's hard one. It's a hard one. But for the young folks, they're like, hey, they've got their juju, right? They've got their protective spirit when they go to watch movies.
But
So,
this is something that don't bring out a lot, but a lot of times some of the best musicians, I grew up in Kansas City,
mhm,
and some of the best musicians
yeah,
would be playing in the club at night
yeah,
and would be the church musician on Sunday morning.
that's right. That's right. That's right.
I don't know.
No, I agree with you.
So
It's
so 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 he showed that the boy could he had to play in the joint,
yeah,
but he couldn't play for his father in church.
uh-huh,
But what I have seen,
yeah,
a lot of these musicians, they get a check from the club
yeah,
on Saturday night,
yeah,
and they get a check from the church on Sunday morning.
for
And
sure.
for those checks, they can live through the rest of the week.
Yes, very good. I think you're right. If he had focused more on Junior as that entity, that would have been nice. I don't really care about the future when he becomes, successful. I want to see that relationship between him and the church, his father and his mother, who obviously cared about him.
That's
And they
right.
would have come around if he had stayed around.
If
But he
he
leaves.
he leaves.
He leaves.
I know. Yeah. I didn't like that part,
Yeah.
and
I think
I
more.
didn't think it was really realistic either.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
because I had been Kansas City was a center for music, so I
Yes.
grew up there as a kid. We were taught that if you if, we focus on music as much as people focus on athletics, so
Okay.
that it wasn't that you had to get a football or basketball.
Yeah.
If you was a kid with an instrument, you were respected because we were told if you get good at this, you'll have a skill that will take
Yeah.
you all the way around the world.
Right. I agree with you. So there's a subplot in a movie there that he could do. I hopefully he'll circle back. Um, but yeah, I think my people told me go see it, and I did, and I use it as a discussion point in my classes, and they come alive. But they're not going to go back and look at the classic films that would, better emulate the use of Black music as a saving device. That's very powerful. And again, that's where Clyde Woods in his blues epistemology talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm technically going to likely stop the recording.
Okay.
And